All right, folks, welcome to episode 1 of Functionize deep learning sessions, some kind of real-time, real-life examples, more in AI transformation, specifically in the areas of test automation or software testing lifecycle. So today, in today's session, we will be looking at an interesting topic. And this interesting topic is something that my good friend George and I were chatting earlier sometime, that was posted on LinkedIn. And this posting is purely on by David Adamo. And David Adamo is talking about AI-generated tests. Are they really lying, or are they really helping in validating what needs to be validated? Or they just transcribing like any LLM would do? And the rise of AI testing shortcut. All right. And David really described the distinctions between the validation and the transcription. And in today's podcast session, we will interview George Nealon, VP Enterprise Sales and Expansion and Growth. We will have George give a brief intro about himself, and we will look at this article that is talking, and it created a good conversation in terms of, is AI really, or the transformation that is happening in software testing via AI, is it really doing what it is intended to and replacing humans? And where is this leading to? And how is this really helping deliver quality product? So this is me, Field CTO at Functionize, prior as a customer with GE Healthcare, and having been in software testing and automation performance engineering for more than 2 decades, close to. I'm here with Functionize, and Functionize is at the forefront, driving the AI transformation. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. Over to you, George. Please give a brief intro about yourself, and how do you see Functionize prior, and you have a great legacy of experience in software. So please talk about that, because it's so important to paint that story and give that context than someone who's just coming off from a sales background without having that context. And how do you see, and why do you believe so much in the Functionize product? So over to you, George.
Kalyan, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you on this topic today. There's so much interest, anxiety around what's happening in the industry today due to the advent of AI. And, you know, AI is not new, but the way it is being applied in today's workforce is already disrupting the way that businesses are functioning. And there's a lot of misinformation in the marketplace Again, no differently than any other transformation periods in history. So I had the fortune of being part of one a number of years ago when people were figuring out how they were going to be doing business on this thing called the internet, and what was that all about, and could transactions actually take place, and what kind of impact would it have on the technology teams and business teams alike. This is truthfully no different, and we're all learning. We're all learning at a rapid pace because the technology is moving and maturing so quickly that it requires that this education is both delivered and personally individuals should be taking personal responsibility and kind of educating themselves to what does this mean to me, and then what does this mean to my job and the businesses that I support. So what drew me to Functionize 5 years ago was the fact that the vision of Tomas was so ahead of the marketplace. His understanding of how to solve a problem was unique and not one that was being taken by others who had been in the industry much, much longer. So he used an approach that was going to require data, an enormous amount of data, because the traditional approaches of using element-based selections were flawed and brittle and really created a significant amount of basically created productivity issues and bottlenecks in the overall development process, and test teams were just having an extremely difficult time trying to keep up with their brethren on the development side. So automation due to cloud deployments and CI/CD pipelines, etc., were speeding things up on the development end, but testers just couldn't keep up. So Tomas's view of the world is this is a problem that can be solved using machine learning and ultimately deep learning over the period of time by using data, collecting an enormous amount of data, and that data would then enable the platform to take a deterministic approach to solving this problem. And basically, this is where Functionize was born, a cloud-native AI ML automation platform that was operationalized for testing. And I say this in just about every conversation that I'm in because I think it's important for people to understand what does that actually mean, right? So operationalizing it for very complex functional testing. And by the way, this is where I should have stopped. I should have been more clear in saying our focus is end-to-end testing, functional testing for web-based applications. Again, that makes up today the lion's share of the marketplace, but it's a very complex problem to solve, and one that is such a good fit for artificial intelligence, right? AI is extremely good at handling mundane tasks, and this particular scenario with testing is such a good fit. It's going to be able to provide, and it has already done so, great value to testing teams and businesses alike. How they interact with their development counterparts has already been impacted just by the first generation of the Functionize platform. And as the platform now continues to mature and we add additional capabilities to to the stack itself, the value and benefits are growing along with it. The original plan is now becoming very much realized by Tomas and by the engineering team to deliver, and this has always been the vision, a fully autonomous loop, right? So we've always been driving to full autonomy. If you take a look at the Functionize Manifesto, which was written, I believe, in 2017, it's always been the vision Tomas's vision. And now that vision is literally months away from coming to fruition. And it's going to change many things. Now, it's more or less kind of setting those expectations and putting in context, what does change actually mean? And when I read articles like the one I read from David, you can tell there's a lot of misinformation that's being propagated in the marketplace today by the use of, first generation generative technologies like Copilot, which have been wildly successful for individual type use, but provide a very different function than the one that I'm talking about. So let me just stop there, Kelly. And I know I gave a lot of information. I don't want to just speak. I want to make sure I'm answering your questions.
No, a very good segue indeed, George. And thanks again for that detailed background. And I think you've seen how the web has modernized and how the digital transformation influenced software world, and being in legacy to middleware to and it makes perfect sense. Why is it so critical to focus more on web? And as you mentioned, there are a lot of mundane jobs and mundane activities that are pretty monotonous. And especially being in software testing world for myself for almost 2 decades, it resonates pretty well, and definitely with all of our audience who are in this space. And you have really articulated why it is so important to focus on anything that is web interface, because right now I still remember and recall when I was doing testing on Oracle ERP, SAP, Siebel CRM, and I was very surprised when Oracle acquired Sun Microsystems. And back in the time, it was there was no web interface. There was, but only for a few of the applications. But a lot of integrations is a challenge if there is less web interfacing. So it makes perfect sense for Functionize to really focus on anything and everything that has a web interface. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of repetitive tasks within that web platform that can definitely be automated. And that's where in early 2000s, when the open source solutions of Selenium came into the play, it made sense for everybody to kind of get on the same bus of Selenium, and then BDD, then keyword driven, then data driven testing, and all these different approaches really helped to modernize from Selenium to Cypress to Playwright. But here we are, where each of these platforms and each of these solutions are also trying to bring in AI. But are they really helping? And moving into the topic of are they just self-fulfilling prophecies, right? As David mentioned here, and kind of deep diving a little bit into it is, as much as David argues, right, are these AI-generated tests, do they often validate what the code does rather than what it should, right? And how much of it is really valid? And is it just transcribing? Is AI truly validating the tests? And without having any understanding of the application or code base, right? And does it really learn from that code base, or only rely on pre-training? And how are these LLMs, like, it also talks about this article, like when you ask an LLM to generate tests, it often mirrors the code's current behavior. And the code's current behavior could potentially have bugs, right? Rather than exploring what should really happen, right? So it's so dangerous, right? Because it could potentially treat a bug as a feature, and it could give a good code coverage. It could give good test coverage. It could just generate tests. But what are the pros and cons of these AI-generated tests, both in legacy versus greenfield code-based applications? And I really wanted to see through from your perspective too, and as much as being a tester myself and a test automation engineer myself, I would also kind of, weigh in along with you, George, is how is Functionize uniquely positioned, given this lot of uncertainty, and more towards leaning into how David is also kind of repeatedly mentioned in his article too, these self-fulfilling prophecies, and are these tests really feeling so good because these are AI generated? Are the teams really focusing more on speed? As much as we want to say that we want to fail fast and we want to be the first, it's becoming a race, and you see a lot of these different other solutions and offerings by different competitors in the marketplace. It really, as a tester, I don't know how much should I be trusting, because this AI solution, it does not have any context of my domain. It doesn't know my data. All it sees is like, all right, this is my user story. Let me create some test cases. But how are they really relevant? Is there any relevance? Is it stitching to my needs? And is it giving me that outcome? Can I really and fully depend on the test cases that are generated, or the code that is being generated? Because it's so fast, it's so quick. So at some point, it kind of frightens me at the rate at which it is driving and delivering. But shouldn't human being not be in the loop at all? So share your thought process into like, how is Functionize looking at all these uncertainties, prophecies, and is AI really helping, or is it just lying? Why is even though the industry is moving so faster at a rate that we cannot, things are changing every quarter, sometimes, and even in industries like banking and financial and insurance, things are evolving and changing, and people are looking forward for AI. But is AI really doing? There is definitely that uncertainty. Is like, what is the accuracy? What is the precision? So give us some context how Functionize is seeing this from a different prism, and how is Functionize different in its approach? And I really wanted to go further down into our conversation. So we'd love to hear from you, George.
Sure, Kalyan. So, and interesting, you brought up the digital transformation banner, because, I mean, I spent quite a few years helping global companies understand what does digital transformation really mean to me as a business, and how do I align to ensure that I'm implementing digital transformation successfully. So understanding how to implement and be successful with digital transformation means whatever you're building it in the context of how people will be using it, right? A complete shift in the way that technology was built in the past, where developers would get together with some analysts and determine, well, this is what we're going to build, and they will come, right? So I think the way that Tomas looked at the world was very similar to a good digital transformation strategy. He wanted to basically he wanted to move away from the traditional approaches that people took to try to solve the problem of web-based software testing in the past, which was through the use of selectors. At the end of the day, it was a combination of frameworks, of libraries, and the dependency was it was very much dependent on the individuals who ended up owning and managing those frameworks and trying to keep up with those frameworks and the cost of doing so and keeping them as accurate as they need to be in this very dynamic, shifting world became quite a challenge. And people began to try to modernize these in a variety of different ways. But at the end of the day, it truly is all about data. And as we like to say, our approach, which is, again, a data-driven approach that doesn't rely on a large language model to solve this problem, that is not trying to interpret code, but instead look at the DOM data, all of the element and attribute data that you could possibly capture from any application that we've encountered over the last 9 years. The more data that we compile, the more intelligent our models can be when it comes to understanding the context behind the DOM data that we've captured. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't see this as a world where we're making business decisions that should be made by business people. And even as we look to delivering this true autonomous loop, the role of the humans as part of the process will definitely be that of the manager of managers that are looking over the results that this autonomous loop is providing. It will never be one where the business needs to be concerned that the testing is done just based on the way that the models think it should be done at all. But with the data that we do have enough contextual intelligence that we can start to make decisions like if your testing scenario requires that you populate something as simple as a zip code, for instance, that, well, the Functionize models have seen this so many times, it has enough data to know that the largest zip code in the country is 90210 and will populate it. That's logic. It's not magic, as we like to say. And we take this approach across the platform. And by the way, we don't stop at one approach. We actually use 3. Our goal at all times is to be as accurate as we possibly can. That accuracy starts with the data that I'm talking about that lives in the cloud. It's actually a multi-dimensional data model as opposed to a flat file. That multi-dimensional data model, which is now around 500 million parameters in size, is our own data model. We've been capturing that data model for all the DOM structured data that we've encountered over the last 8 to 9 years, and it lives very much in the cloud. It can only live in the cloud because you couldn't run it on your desktop. We're using that. We're using deep learning, and we're using computer vision. So multiple elements so that the accuracy is as high as it possibly could be when Functionize is going through and doing its element selection. And the accuracy today is around 99.97%. That's enormously high compared to using traditional selector-based approaches or trying to use frameworks. You don't need to maintain Functionize. Functionize maintains itself. We're not using it for unit testing. It's designed, as I mentioned, for functional testing. And functional testing is basically a combination of an end-to-end workflow process for ultimately designed in support of a business function, whether it be an e-commerce function or a pharmaceutical function or whatever that business function is. It's a multitude of steps, short or long, that are required to ensure that when that particular service can be delivered, there's no disruption. Functionize as a platform now, which has now been matured into a multi-modal platform, literally allows the creation of a test case to be done through the test studio either by pointing and clicking or by giving it a prompt, which can be generated through a user story, and then executed. And then at that execution time, it's using that data, deep learning, and computer vision in a container, which is spun up in the cloud, and can allow you to scale that execution process as widely as your business requirements require. That model itself is unique and not one that's has been delivered by any product of its kind. And during that execution period, it's actually going through and it's using a Markov decision process. It looks at the application as a state machine. So it's basically following this process. So a traditional, something as simple as a hover or navigation, which is going to break a traditional automation model, is no challenge to Functionize whatsoever. It easily navigates that, and it has the ability to go through its element selection process, and it's self-healing at the same time. So the accuracy that makes it so high for element selection is exactly what we depend on for self-healing, and why the result sets are as favorable as they are with Functionize. But it doesn't stop there. As part of the next step in the process, a lot of time is often spent when something breaks, going through logs. Again, a mundane task that we don't believe should be handled by your test team or your engineers. Functionize can then use the diagnostic capabilities to reduce the amount of time that is spent trying to dissect and identify what the root cause of that problem was, and then maintain it and heal it, and then start that process all over again. So this is where the full loop really comes into play, and we're not depending on a large language model, which is an enormous amount of data that, as we all know, a lot of the concerns come into play because if you ask Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT a message, if you ask it a question 10 different times, you'll most likely get 10 different answers. And it often can, in many cases, even hallucinate. We're because of the proprietary fine-tuned data set that Functionize depends on, we don't, our customers. So again, because of the approach Functionize has taken, we don't need to be concerned about the things that David is referencing. We're not concerned about using artificial intelligence in a way that creates a lot of uncertainty or fear as to what kind of results that they're getting or the quality of the results. Instead, as I mentioned, we're using a very fine-tuned set of proprietary data that has a specific function that isn't magic, it's logic, but yet it has enough data to provide contextual intelligence and significantly improve the overall end-to-end process. And the kind of productivity gains that development teams are now seeing are 5 to 10 times what they would experience using traditional automation. And by the way, those productivity metrics will only grow as that autonomous loop becomes a reality within the next 2 to 3 quarters. So there's a lot of excitement about this, but we don't believe the approach we're taking introduces a lot of the uncertainties, fears, or concerns that David is expressing within the article. I respect his feedback and insights absolutely, and certainly share in them. And it's one of the reasons that we've been so careful to leverage artificial intelligence and generative AI in a way that we believe is more responsible.
Great, George. I think and I'll just summarize, right? So what Functionize is doing is the Markov decision-making process. Great. That's something which people needs to understand, that is, this is predominantly the reason why that the future depends not just only on the present state and action, with this decision-making process. It also has context. It also has the intent. And it looks at the goal of all these agents that Functionize is building is to find that optimal policy which tells and which action to take in each state to maximize the expected outcome in that stipulated amount of time. I think that's a great thing that people need to understand is that this dynamic programming, the solution through Markov decision-making process, which enables this dynamic programming in value iteration and in learning from sampled experience. And this is so mission critical. And that is what I think is alluding towards the 99.97 accuracy and the precision in terms of being very deterministic towards the job to be done by these agents. And you also touched upon the autonomy wherein the agents will be able to determine the root cause of the failure and not just flash the failed step instead is so critical. And I think these are some things that really positions Functionize and going back to where we started, right, is the uncertainties, the prophecies. And again, I'm repeating myself, right? Is AI really lying, and is it just transcripting instead of really understanding, and is it really the intent? So I will move on to my final topic of our discussion in terms of the purpose-driven test automation to make those outcome-based decisions and the judgments, right? I think that is what you are alluding towards, George, is like Functionize is very much positioned because of the context, the rich data, and the technology, the forefront of the technology, how we are positioned, and the agentic capabilities, and the full autonomy that you are alluding towards is more not just these agents doing the repetitive tasks or the mundane jobs to automate, which is pretty significantly possible by any other tool or platform, but making and ensuring that it is intelligent enough to deliver the qualitative product and avoid any potential defects leaking into the product, into production environment, every build to build. And I also believe and understand that there's huge amount of integrations with the CI and the CD platforms too. That also ensures the speed and the rate at which the tests can scale. So one last question, George, if you can really summarize, how is Functionize delivering the purpose-driven test automation? And you really explained, and I think by now we all understand that as much as there is uncertainty because a lot of these LLMs doesn't have context and they don't use the AI does not have any. All that the LLMs does is, all right, I looked at this chat, let me generate based on what I have. The intent is missing, and the focus is more on the implementation and the execution of the ask. So if you can just give us a quick summarization and give a closing thought on why the context is so important. And fundamentally, I think That's where the Functionize core secret sauce is. So, and give us that thought process into one. I think it gives me as a tester a confidence that, all right, Functionize is just not built towards what is required or what the implementation of the application by the engineering teams is, but Functionize is also talk to us more on how is Functionize trying to come up with the transformation of the prompt generation and the context on which these models are relying on, and also the speed at which the scalability is driving the organizations towards the quality deliverable and towards the goal of modernizing the software test automation overall. So give us the background and closing thoughts if possible, George.
Sure. So maybe I'll start with you reference one point that is always an area of interest on the part of any of the customers that I talk to, which tend to be speed. And what does speed mean to the customers? Often, many of the enterprise customers that we speak with are trying to figure out how to, again, best leverage the investment that they've already made within their existing process. So Functionize is very much focused on helping them bridge the gap between kind of the world that they're in today and the world that will be Functionized in a responsible way that ensures that none of the key contextual intelligence doesn't get lost in translation. That is a focus right now of my engineering leaders and Tomas himself personally, that we can help them fully take advantage of the investment and then of the power of the core platform that is Functionized as they start to look at importing these scripts or stories into Functionize in a way that nothing gets lost in translation, which is our biggest concern because the business and technology teams have made a very significant investment in that. So it's a big focus of Functionize. The other thing that as we're leveraging both generative AI and AI in one single core platform, we're very focused on ensuring that we're extremely responsible in how we're using both as part of the end-to-end automated testing process in a way that gives the user the confidence that Functionize, although with the power of the data that it has, is not overstepping its bounds and making business decisions that should only be made by the business experts, the SMEs within each one of the businesses that we support. That is where their role should never change, and Functionize should not overstep those bounds and give the business a concern that we're doing so as part of that process. Yet leverage all of the data that we've collected now for the last 8 to 9 years in a way that this contextual intelligence significantly reduces the amount of time in mundane tasks that the engineers on the team of the business are spending today, significantly improving the overall process. And our vision for where we see this going in the not too distant future is the alignment between automation as a development team and as a testing team will become a fully synchronized process basically as part of the sprint process that organizations are trying to basically improve and kind of remove a lot of that bottleneck that has traditionally existed because those two worlds were not designed to work together. So the power of Functionize as a cloud-based solution is in the not too distant future I see a world where Functionize basically becomes a production service that's fully in line with the in-sprint process, giving the technology people and the business people a fully synchronous process with the highest possible degree of confidence and delivering quality in a way that only the business truly understands what their objectives are. So in summary, that's where we see this market going. And Functionize, no better product, no company in the world is better positioned than Functionize in actually helping the businesses actually achieve that objective, and basically bring that to reality within the next 6 to 12 months.
Great, George. I really like a few of the things a few keywords in your closing thoughts. Responsible AI.
Yes.
So important, right? So that really gives me an assurance beyond the confidence, right? And that is the message. I think Functionize is as much as speed, scalability, quality, responsible AI. That is so important, George. And thanks so much for sharing all your thoughts, given your rich background, and you have seen the legacy to brownfield to greenfield. I think this really should be well positioned for our audience and to David as well as much as there are a lot of uncertainties and prophecies with what AI is doing. How is Functionize different? We are context driven. We are very much intent oriented, and to put together, we are responsible in terms of what the AI is transforming this software test automation. Is it right, George?
Correct. 100%. Well said.
Thank you so much, George. Looking forward to our next session. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks again, George. Take care.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.